Democracy is one of humanity's most powerful ideas. One person, one vote, governments chosen by the people, leaders who can be removed without revolutions or bloodshed. Today, billions of people live in countries that describe themselves as democracies. But democracy has a problem, and it depends on something extraordinarily unpredictable: us. Voters can be manipulated. Politicians can lie. Money can buy influence. Majorities can mistreat minorities. And governments obsessed with winning the next election can neglect problems that will take decades to solve. So perhaps the important question isn't, is democracy good? It's more like, what can go wrong with democracy? And more importantly, can those weaknesses be fixed? Let's take a step-by-step closer look. 1. The problem of the voter. Democracy rests on a powerful assumption that ordinary citizens can make informed decisions about who should govern them. But think about what we're asking voters to understand, such as economics, healthcare, taxation, foreign policy, energy, climate, immigration, defense, education, and housing. These are extraordinarily complicated subjects. Yet most citizens have jobs, families, mortgages, and lives to live. They cannot spend hours every day studying government policy. So, voters often use shortcuts by focusing on political parties, personalities, headlines, emotions, and ideology. Sometimes even just a single issue may be all a voter may be interested in, which creates one of democracy's fundamental vulnerabilities. A voter doesn't necessarily have to understand a policy to vote for it. And a politician doesn't even necessarily have to offer good policy, only popular policy, which is often enough to attract votes. 2. Popularity versus good government. Imagine two politicians. The first says, "We have serious economic problems. Fixing them will require difficult reforms, higher taxes in some areas, spending cuts in others, and the benefits may take 10 years to appear." The second politician says, "I can lower your taxes, increase government spending, protect your pension, build more hospitals, and make everyone richer." Who has the most attractive election campaign that will win over the voters? Is it the one with the good news or the bad news? Democracy can create incentives for politicians to tell voters what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. Economists sometimes describe parts of this problem through public choice theory. Politicians respond to incentives just like everyone else, and their most immediate incentive is often simple: get elected, then get re-elected. 3. The tyranny of the majority. Democracy literally gives power to the majority. But what happens when the majority is wrong? This problem has concerned political thinkers for centuries. If 60% of people vote to remove the rights of the other 40%, is that democratic? Technically, perhaps. But is it just? Clearly not. This is why modern democracies are usually more than simple majority rule. To function properly, democratic states need to have constitutions, as well as courts, legal protections, independent institutions, freedom of speech, and minority rights. These institutions are the guardrails that deliberately restrict what elected governments can do, and that reveals an interesting paradox. Sometimes democracy must be restrained in order to protect democracy. 4. Demagogues and populism. There is another weakness. Democracies often reward charisma. A skilled politician doesn't necessarily need the best policies. They just need the best story. Find an enemy, create fear, offer simple solutions, and present yourself as the only person capable of fixing everything. This strategy is ancient. More than 2,000 years ago, Greek philosophers worried about demagogues manipulating public opinion. But even though the technology has changed, human psychology hasn't. Modern political campaigns have television and radio, algorithms, social media, targeted advertising, artificial intelligence, and enormous quantities of your personal data. The ability to influence voters has arguably never been more sophisticated. 5. The information problem. Democracy requires citizens to share at least some understanding of reality. But what happens when they don't? Today, two people living next door to each other can inhabit completely different information worlds. One watches one news network. The other watches another. Their social media algorithms reinforce their existing beliefs, so they encounter different facts, different commentators, different villains. And eventually, they may not simply disagree about solutions, they are more likely to disagree about what is actually happening. Although democracy can survive disagreement, it struggles much more when citizens can no longer agree on basic reality. 6. Money and political influence. Democracy promises political equality, one citizen, one vote. But citizens do not have equal resources. Wealthy individuals, corporations, unions, advocacy organizations, and interest groups can potentially spend enormous amounts trying to influence politics. People and organizations should be able to communicate their interests to government, which means that lobbying itself is not inherently corrupt. But problems arise when access becomes unequal. If wealth provides greater access to politicians, greater capacity to influence public debate, then political equality can begin to separate from economic reality. Everyone still has one vote, but not everyone has the same ability to influence the choices placed before voters. 7. Short-term thinking. Perhaps one of democracy's greatest structural problems is time. While politicians can only think in election cycles, many of humanity's greatest challenges operate across decades. Examples of long-term issues include infrastructure, national debt, aging population, education, energy security, environmental degradation, and defense planning. Yet a government will be reluctant to make an unpopular decision today that produces enormous benefits 20 years from now, because the politician making that unpopular decision might lose the next election. This creates a dangerous incentive, particularly when you delay the pain, promise immediate benefits, and leave the difficult decisions to whoever comes next. Democracy is often very good at asking, "What do voters want today?" but can be much worse at asking, "What will society need in 30 years?" 8. Political polarization. Democracy depends on competition, but competition can become tribalism. Instead of saying, "I disagree with you," politics becomes, "I hate you." Opponents become enemies, compromise becomes weakness, and political identity becomes part of personal identity. Once this happens, people may support policies not because they believe those policies are good, but because their political opponents hate them. So, the objective changes. It is no longer about governing effectively, it becomes about winning. And when victory becomes more important than institutions, democracy becomes vulnerable. 9. Democracy can destroy itself. Perhaps the greatest paradox of democracy is that people can sometimes use democratic institutions to weaken democracy itself. A leader can win an election legitimately, then attack independent courts, pressure journalists, undermine electoral institutions, reward loyalists, discredit opponents, and gradually concentrate power. Democratic decline does not always arrive with tanks in the streets. Sometimes it arrives through elections, one institution at a time. This is why democracy depends on more than voting. It requires institutions strong enough to survive and outlast the politicians elected to control them. But what is the alternative? At this point, democracy might sound terrible, but there is an important problem. The alternatives have weaknesses too. According to Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government. That is, if you exclude all other forms of government. An authoritarian government may make decisions quickly, but what happens when the leader makes a catastrophic mistake? Who tells them they're wrong? Who challenges them? Who removes them? While democracy can be chaotic, slow, frustrating, and inefficient, these apparent weaknesses can also provide safeguards like debate, which slows decisions, courts that constrain governments, opposition parties that challenge leaders, journalists who expose wrongdoing, and elections which allow the peaceful transfers of power. Hence, democracy's inefficiency can sometimes be part of its protection against tyranny. How do we make democracy better? Perhaps democracy should never be treated as a finished system. To succeed over the long term, it requires maintenance with ongoing attention to independent courts, a free press, transparent political financing, effective education, strong anti-corruption institutions, reliable elections that are free and fair, protection for political minorities, and citizens willing to encounter ideas they disagree with. But perhaps the most important ingredient is something much simpler: humility, the willingness to consider that your political opponents might occasionally be right, and that you might occasionally be wrong. Because democracy cannot function if every election becomes a battle between good and evil. Eventually, someone decides that defeating evil is more important than following democratic rules. Conclusion. So, what are the pitfalls of democracy? There are many and include uninformed voting, short-term political thinking, demagoguery, misinformation, money and influence, majority rule without sufficient protection for minorities, political tribalism, and the possibility that democratic institutions themselves can gradually be weakened. But perhaps democracy's greatest strength is hidden within its greatest weakness. It accepts that human beings are flawed. Leaders make mistakes. Voters make mistakes. Governments make mistakes. And therefore, power should never become permanent. Democracy does not guarantee good government. It doesn't guarantee intelligent decisions. And it certainly doesn't guarantee good leaders. What it provides is something arguably more important: the ability to correct mistakes without destroying the entire political system. Democracy is messy because humanity is messy. Perhaps the objective should never be to create a perfect democracy. There is no such thing. Instead, the objective is to build one strong enough to survive our imperfections. What do you think? Is democracy still the best system of government we have? Or are its weaknesses becoming increasingly difficult to ignore? And if you could change one thing about modern democracy, what would it be? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and join us as we continue exploring the ideas, institutions, and behaviors that have shaped human civilization. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking questions.